Why are we always stuck in this permanent pattern of doing things all the time? It's almost as though we are trying to avoid something, avoiding the simple act of stillness. When I look around at our world today, I see a world that is chronically busy all the time, really, always with something to do, always terrified to do nothing. And this is something I've been sort of reflecting upon as I reflect on my own habits, my own sort of patterns within my life. And I ask myself, why do I feel this sort of niggling restlessness, this agitated sort of feeling that I need to be productive, I need to be doing something, I need to be working? I feel as though it's almost like we're all infected with this form of mind virus, that productivity is good and idleness or rest or inactivity is bad because, you're not contributing, you're not pushing yourself ahead, you're not self-improving. Often, on YouTube, social media, you will see, this proliferation of ideas with regards to self-improvement, this sort of relentless and almost narcissistic effort to improve yourself in all facets of life. And this should be the sole objective of your life. You should be maximizing and optimizing your morning routine so that you can produce more stuff, produce more output. And it's almost as though, especially when you look at these and you see all these people, all these productive people, there is a subtle conditioning of our consciousness that this mode of being where you are working, 16 hours a fucking day is good. But as I've sort of evolved through these sort of things, through, binge listening to Andrew Huberman sort of podcasts with regards to how to optimize my health, my productivity, my sleep, when I was doing all that years ago, and sort of go through that sort of evolution of, optimizing your human being, I've reached a certain point now where I can see how that ideology of excessive productivity can have this profound deterioration on your psyche. It sort of prevents you from being able to really rest, to sit still, to truly introspect. I think when we are relentlessly productive, it leads to this sort of tunnel vision, right? This tunnel vision which sort of creates this sort of niggling agitation in every moment of experience, right? Where you cannot simply be present. You're always thinking about work. If you're working, you're involved in work, but if you're not working, you're thinking about work. If you're resting, the purpose of that rest is so that you can go back to work, And we've forgotten the sheer value of human existence itself, right? The meaning of existence has been reduced to work. And I made a video about this as this form of productivity addiction that is, broadcasted and programmed into people's psyche from a very young age, and especially so through these devices that we all love to use. This productivity addiction is a form of slave consciousness, right? It's a form of consciousness that prevents us from introspecting. It prevents us from appreciating the beauty of life. It reduces everything to just the sheer mechanism of work. We're these robots whose sole prerogative is work and labor and becoming better at that. And now, how do we respond to such a world, really? Because work is important, right? Because we need it for money. Because everything of value in life costs money. And money for most people is becoming increasingly scarce. It's becoming increasingly difficult. And it seems as though a lot of people are trapped in this sort of hamster wheel of constantly needing to work to afford the basic necessities of life. But their work will never achieve them liberation because all the basic necessities of life are increasing in price. This is inflation. This is the design of the monetary system. The monetary system is designed to keep the mass population in a state of subservience, in a state of slavery. We just don't call it slavery. We call it jobs. We call it the 9 to 5. But this different language doesn't change the reality. Doesn't change the reality that most people are sort of in a form of debt bondage through their mortgages, with their homes, through their student debt. We need to really acknowledge this this debt-based economy, right? Creates the architecture of a slavery system. Because when you're in debt, right? And I know this is a tangent, but it is connected to our productivity addiction, because many people, they feel this work pressure because they need to pay off their debt, they need to pay their mortgage, they need to pay their bills, all their bills. Everyone's got fucking bills. So living has a cost, and people feel like they have to work more and more and more and more just to survive. And this isn't a human existence. This isn't a free human existence. This isn't a dignified human existence. This is to put it bluntly, it's the existence of someone who is just being squashed. And no wonder there is a mental health epidemic. We think just going to therapy is going to solve one's problems. But if you're in a situation where you can't survive, and you're constantly having to work absurd hours, doing jobs that you're perhaps overqualified for, that is mundane, boring, and ultimately not producing anything of value, this creates a profound dissonance within the psyche that simply speaking to a therapist isn't going to solve that, because your issues come from the way the game is designed. The game has an abhorrent design. The game is designed to extract your life force, your energy. And as I speak about energy, right, I'm reminded of the topic of debt, right? And we often look upon debt as a sort of, strictly in financial terms, but it is a subtle energetical undercurrent. When we think of, debt fundamentally is an obligation that you have to the future, an obligation to pay for the future, to, expend your energy, your life force in order to pay this sort of thing. And if you don't, work, if you don't expend your life force in order to pay that future obligation, that is obviously a debt. We have laws to throw you in prison, to bankruptcy laws and all this sort of stuff. And, many people, when they have these mortgages, which they live their entire life paying off, but they never really pay off because of the way that the interest rates are sort of designed within that thing. It's baffling to me why any people sort of enter into such an arrangement, because they feel like they have to. They're conditioned into feeling like they have to. This is just the way you own a house. You have to take money from the bank. And, you think, oh, look, now I've got a house, but you don't really have a house. The bank owns the house and it's letting you live there on the condition that you work your entire life. And, I'm saying a lot of stuff here, and I'm aware of that. And a lot of stuff that is uncomfortable for most people. But we have to truly acknowledge it, because people are growing increasingly dissatisfied with their lives, increasingly dissatisfied with the present. And it seems as though, the people we work for, these corporations and the elites, quote unquote, they don't really care about people. And this is sort of a perennial observation of human civilization, is sort of this bifurcation of the masses and the people who sort of pull on the strings of the masses through media and government and the military industrial complex, all that sort of stuff. And people listening to this, we're probably one of the masses. We're probably not the privileged, archonic view. But how do we respond to such a world that seeks to enslave us, that seeks to, hijack our energy, whether it's through the media and trying to install certain bullshit programs to keep us distracted, whether it's sort of work relations, the economy, trying to keep us in the state of perpetual work and with the sort of illusion of freedom, but it's never really there because advertisers will try and give you shiny things to strive for and all this sort of bullshit to keep you distracted from the real essence of life, the real meaning of life. Part of what my channel is an articulation of how we respond to it. How do we sort of, alchemize and transmute the collective shadow as it's appearing in the world today? And that's a journey that we all have to take for ourselves. We all have different lives, different circumstances, different, karmic accumulations, to put it that way. But I think the first essential step is to witness the shadow, to witness these uncomfortable and often morally repugnant aspects of reality. We cannot simply whitewash it away because that's not sincere, that's not authentic. And I think upon seeing such things, if we see the ways in which we have been enslaved, the way we have subtle programmings installed in our consciousness, these habits of distraction that we have a tendency to do, we should look at all of those patterns and we should accept them fundamentally. We should forgive ourselves for having these patterns. But this forgiveness and acceptance is not this sort of a resignation that, this is just the way things are and I can't do anything to change it. A lot of the conditioning that many of us have is this sort of this feeling that we are victims of reality, that we have no power to change it, that we are, not capable, that we're not smart enough, that we are not strong enough, we don't have the willpower. These are all beliefs that keep people stuck. And when you are stuck, when you're limited, then you can, work as a part of someone else's dream. And then you can be a slave. Part of the way that we enslave people is to enslave their mind, is to install these sort of feelings of, low self-esteem, a feeling that, I cannot, rise up out of this circumstance. And it's a pervasive thing, But yeah, I'm reaching the sort of the end of my thread here. And I suppose I'll keep this sort of short, and I apologize for the abrupt sort of endings, but I suppose that's the way my consciousness works. I don't have the answers sort of neatly articulated. These are sort of free riffing, free rolling sort of commentaries, and you're witnessing the chain of my own thought processes. And I think that's a beautiful form of creation, because you are truly seeing how I think through these sorts of things. I don't script, I don't plan. It is just a simple act of expression itself. And I think, I like to create a norm of that. I enjoy this form of creation. I discover something about myself through this sort of, display, this performance, whatever you call it that. But I hope that's been interesting. I hope you've derived some sort of benefit from listening to me ramble. But anyways, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Goodbye and adios.